But
Dr. Wooten, if you'll first just say your name for me.
Ken Wooten.
Wooten.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Liz.
Yeah.
You can just continue, or whenever you want to start hitting him with questions, go right ahead.
All right. Well, Ken, you've been on this campus for so long, and you're so familiar with the whole scene. I wonder what you might share that would give us some feeling for the amount of experience you've had on campus over the years, and what it means, and how you take it to be important in your life.
Well, I came here as a student, transferred from East Central Junior College, and my background is such that we never had a home. My parents were sharecroppers, and so I was coming through here to meet a young man who was going to take me off somewhere, I didn't know where at the time, to sell Bibles so that I could afford to come to Ole Miss. And his name was Johnny Sharp. I don't know if he's related to any of the Sharps here or not, but
I don't know either.
At any rate, I looked at those big white columns and that big house over there, and I decided I was home.
This was it.
This was it. At any rate, I was a student for too long. I stayed around, got my bachelor's degree, and I was in speech therapy and psychology, and then started working on a master's because I didn't want to leave, and I got all the coursework off and started to write a dissertation. I decided that wasn't something I was interested in, so I looked around, and the thing that would keep me here longer was the law school. So I went to law school and finished in 1960. Actually, in '59, the university asked if I'd be a recruiter, a field representative. And so I started visiting high schools and working with George Street, whom I guess is an icon at Ole Miss.
Indeed.
And he taught me all the ropes, hopefully. I tried to emulate him. He was a great guy.
He was.
And anyway, we started recruiting students and working in financial aid. That was his area, was placement and financial aid. And then later he moved on to be director of development. And at that point, I got a little taste of what placement would be like, and became, Frank Moak came at that time in George's place. And a year later he moved, or 2 years later, he moved into as Dean of Students, or Dean of Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, I guess was his title. And I became Director of Placement and Financial Aid. And some of the best times of my life was working with students, helping them in their financial situations, and also in placing students. And we were able to place our good students with a great number of companies throughout the country. And through those associations, people still come back and say, "Hey, I remember you." And it's quite an honor to have been in a position to have, if not changed the lives of some people, at least been a part of their life. And I continued to work summers before I started work for the university, selling Bibles in various parts of the country, but always came back into Ole Miss, and because I hung around so long, they gave me that job. to start me out.
Well, it worked out for everybody, didn't it?
Well, hopefully so. You know, you never know whether you made a contribution or not to anything, but it was an enjoyable thing, and it gave me an opportunity to do some things that I never would have been able to do. It not only to see the young people who came through and to get to know them and appreciate them, but also to advance my professional life and gain a little life experience, which I had had very little of up until that point. I didn't become any smarter, but I was able to fool people a little bit better.
You tucked away more miles on the on the meter of life, I guess. I'm amused at your starting selling Bibles, because so many people have told me that same story or been over that same ground, where that's what they did, whether they really intended to go that way. Their directions just took them that way, and made it work. And I don't think anybody was any more surprised, perhaps, than the people who were selling the Bibles and had that as their experience. But in any case, it served a lot of people well.
Well, it certainly did me. Broaden, I'd never traveled before, so it got me into some places. The first place they sent me was over to North Carolina to sell Bibles there, over near the coast of North Carolina. So I was there in Georgia and Louisiana and Arkansas, and as well as Mississippi, over the 5 summers that I did that. But I also had some jobs at the university. I started out in the cafeteria when I first came here, and spent, I don't know, I was there into law school, working for a man by the name of Wooten, who was director of food services at the time. And that and my Bible selling and being a dormitory manager put me through, well, I was out there about 9 years. I don't know how much education I got for all that time, but.
You racked up the hours that would go on your record permanently.
Yes. And although it wasn't necessarily important for my position, for my job, I moved on from placement and financial aid to the registrar's office and became registrar and admissions dean when I left the university in, I guess, '94. Left that to run for public office and got beat by 1,000 votes, but it was a great experience.
Yeah, a lot of us were pushing for you.
I appreciate that. But all in all, the university experience, knowing the people, good and bad, and some of the things that occurred over the time, you may be interested in particular the integration of Ole Miss. And since I was in admissions, I was working and began to work at that point in trying to attract minority students, and then had to work, or did work with them for over the years while we were having, a problem of being looked at the, by the entire nation. And we had to fight our way back to achieving some kind of reputation that would not be at least negative. We we did that in a number of ways, and I'll be happy to talk about the rioting and that sort. I spent the night in the Lyceum building.
And you do, I want you to tell us about that and all the related experiences, because not only are they crucial to the story of the institution and its experiences collectively over the years, but I think it's also an important thing for people to know about our history beyond what they probably do know.
Well, I think so. You know, being interested, I've read a number of accounts of what happened, and they normally were by people who were not on the scene, so they knew some things. They knew what the records said, but had no actual experience in being actually there to see it. I was. This was, of course, a Sunday afternoon, September 30, '62.
We all remember.
We remember that date. Well, I was home and got a telephone call from Dean Love, the Dean of Students.
Dean Love very well.
And he said, come on out to campus. They're bringing Meredith on campus. Well, so I quickly jumped in the car and came to campus. But this had been building, as everybody knows, I guess, over the summer months when Mr. Meredith had made application for, I believe, for the second semester and then for each of the summer sessions, and was turned down. And this was fall, and the state had exhausted all of its appeals, justice-wise, and we'd been told to admit Mr. Meredith. But in the meantime, over the summer months, federal marshals would bring him to campus to register him, practically every week. And it became a sort of a fun thing to go out into the Grove and take our brown bag and see the federal marshals bring him to the campus, and Ross Barnett would fly up, the governor would fly up from Jackson and turn him down, and they'd go away, and then a week or so later they'd be right back with him. So this went on, but the thing about that was the fact that it gave, I would say, nuts from all over the country a chance to come here. There is that element out there, and we see that still today with the demonstrations and rioting that occurs, and for whatever purpose. There are people out there, and they don't care what the purpose is, they just want to be where the action is, and if there's action going on anywhere, they will tend to come. And that's what happened here. We had a great number of people from far away who came. In fact, they arrested people from as far away as California and the East Coast. That story, I don't think, has been told, nor has the fact that young people from that far away were here and were detained. But at any rate, when they finally did come in, Dean Love called, and all the people in student affairs, there were 5 of us at the time, and we were to answer the telephones, we were to advise the marshals, because they were scattered all over the campus and didn't know where the location of it, didn't know anything about the geography of the campus. So that was our job, was to assist them and to answer the telephones. And of course the telephones began ringing, and there were calls from all over the world. I recall, for example, answering the phone, and a very British speaking person said, "London calling." And it was the London Times, and it said, whatever is happening at Old, OLD, Mississippi. I mean, and of course parents were calling to check on, to be assured that their students were okay. So anyway, the marshals had circled the Lyceum building with these huge Army trucks, bumper to bumper, all around the Lyceum.
I remember the pictures of that.
There are pictures of that, and they set up their place in the Lyceum building where they would direct all the activity. There were, I believe, 6 federal officials that, including John Doerr, and I don't remember all the people that were involved, but this, as you know, was 62, and telephones weren't what they are today.
No.
So they immediately set up an open line, one line to Washington. And so that all these 6 people who were in the office could hear and could question Mr. Kennedy that was on the other end of the line. This is Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General. And so we were able to hear in that small office. We were in the registrar's office. And so we knew what was going on, what the conversation was between Kennedy and the individuals that he had here that were in charge of the operation. So a lot of things happened. Whoever started what, I guess nobody will ever know. And there were a lot of news people who wanted, of course, to get some news. Journalists are looking for something to report, and of course we had some students that were willing to give them something to write about.
Right.
So tear gas was shot, and the war began. Sometime early in the night, when I drove on campus, I came across where the School of Education building is located.
Right.
And there was one highway patrol car sitting on the grass. He'd driven up on the grass and was sitting on his car on the outside, on the fender. And the crowd was coming across the bridge. It looked like a football game. It was that many people. All kinds of people from everywhere that had got here. Ross Barnett had made a big speech down in Jackson at the football game.
I've heard about that over and over,
Yeah.
of course.
He said, "Never!" And those people took him at his word, and they came on up here. That was on Saturday, and this was Sunday. So they'd had time to get up here, and they were spilling across the bridge when I got to the campus. But anyway, all those people were out there, including, at that point, a good number of students. One of the things that has concerned me about all the people who have written about it, they speak of it primarily as a student-incited riot, and that just was not true. I don't know what time it is. It's hard to remember. When you're spending a night in something like that, time does not mean a whole lot.
No, it doesn't.
And you can't identify when things occurred even. But sometime a bit after it had started, Dean Love gathered all of us together, the 5 of us, student affairs folks, and he said, we're going out and make our students go back to their dormitories. And of course back then, students would listen to administrators a little bit more than they do now.
Right.
And so the marshal said, you can't go, well, we can't protect you. And I said, well, we feel we're obligated to go and see if we can't get our students out of all this mess. And they said, well, if you go, we're gonna, and anything happens, we're shooting these tear gas canisters, and if one of them hits you, it's pretty dangerous. Anyway, we decided we'd go anyway, so we went between the trucks and went out across the street from the Lyceum building into the circle.
Mm-hmm.
By then, of course, it was after night, it was dark, and they had either thrown the brick into the lights, or all the lights, there were no lights out there at all.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked across the street, and when we did, we were engulfed by the mob.
Mm.
And they tried to use us as shields to rush the Lyceum building. And the marshals were true to the word. They started shooting the tear gas canisters. Those things are about yay long and about that big around. And they're made out of metal, so they're pretty hefty. If they hit you in the right place, it's bad news. Any rate, with all that barrage of tear gas, we were able to get away, get back into the Lyceum building. We didn't go out again. Through the night, of course, there were things were happening. They started setting cars afire and running them against the building, and brought up a Caterpillar. They had all these bricks. The Shoemaker Hall, the biology building, was under construction, and the building was up, and all of the brick had been delivered, but none of them had been put on
To complete the building.
to complete the building. So all those brick were just sitting there, and that was ammunition for the mob. When we went out into the crowd to identify students and send them back to the dormitories, guess how many we were able to identify?
I have no...
We didn't recognize a single student. But at any rate, I'm sure there were some back in the crowd somewhere, but a few. But it was not a student-led riot at all. It was a wide variety of people from the Mid-South, from Mississippi, from surrounding states, and all these people that had come from far away. And through the night, there was people killed, and the guns were going off, and they kept trying to make it into the Lyceum building. In the meantime, this is, to me, the most interesting part of all. The mob seemed to know where Meredith was. He was up in Baxter Hall, and a small contingent of the marshals were up there guarding him. They didn't attack them or him, but they attacked the Lyceum building, which I think was symbolic of states' rights, Mississippi, what people call their way of life. The Lyceum was just, it meant home to me, but to these people it meant this was states' rights versus the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they were fighting. They were fighting that. The symbolism, to me, is the thing that I've never quite been able to understand, but I can understand why people may have felt that way. But anyway, we spent the night there. There was a point when McShane, who was in charge of the marshals, comes running in, and he yells as he came in the door, "Sirs," and he's talking to these people who were in charge, "permission to use our firearms." And Robert Kennedy, without hesitation, he didn't consult with these people, didn't give them a chance to answer. He said, "Permission denied." And McShane said, if I recall exact words, "But sir, they're shooting at us with high-powered rifles, and we're almost out of. We have one case of tear gas left, and our truck that was coming from the airport's been hijacked." And he said, "Permission denied." And McShane said, "But sir, what shall we do?" And Robert Kennedy, you know what he said? He said, "Use your billy clubs." Now, whether that was even reasonable or not, you know what would have happened. There would have been a massacre if they'd had permission to shoot into that crowd. So, I have a great deal of admiration for Robert Kennedy. So, I've always thought highly of him since that day.
Well, he took a chance and made a, for then, bold decision.
Well, it was, and if he had known the situation, because there were wounded men. The Lyceum building, you know, east and west, north and south, the long hallways.
Right.
You couldn't walk down that hall without stepping over a wounded man. And one man I saw had his entire throat shot off. Mm. Now they said that nobody died, none of the marshals. They were all, but you know, they had broken arms and from the bricks, and first one thing and another. But and that may be true. I don't know. But the report ended with no casualties on their side, on that side, on the marshal side. But with one man murdered, a person, as you know, who was a journalist, and one fellow, local fellow, that just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time when a shot came by him.
Right.
But anyway, the next morning, the sad thing about it was walking out in the sun as the sun was coming up, and the streets were literally full. There wasn't a place you could walk without stepping over blood or vomit or glass or brick.
Not anything anybody around here was accustomed to dealing with.
No, we didn't know what we did. Well, when I was driving, then I started driving home, and I suppose this is as sad a thing as the whole affair, and got up to the stoplight where University Avenue and South Lamar intercepts. There was you may remember, there was a Texaco station up on the hill on the right where the bank is now.
Yes.
And there was a big apron there that had a couple of highway patrol cars sitting there.
Yeah, that site had once had a large home situated there years and years ago.
Yeah, I never remembered it. There was a Texaco station there, and it was across from the Gus station, where the new hotel is being built now.
Yeah. Well, the time I'm talking about was a long time ago.
A long time ago, before that. But anyway, I stopped at the red light, and across coming into campus, I'm sure he probably was a university employee, was an old black man. And he stopped for the red light, and I stopped for the red light. And when he stopped, there were a couple of youngsters, they looked to be 14, 15 years old, ran out and started slashing at his tires. Mm. And the highway patrol cars just sat there. Well, after a bit, both the black man and me, we ran the red light, and I went home, and he to whatever his day happened to call for. But to see people that are supposed to protect us acting in such a way. Of course, they had left the campus, you know, after the tear gas really started. They didn't do anything they were pulled out.
Yeah.
And they didn't do anything to assist in crowd control or to keep the rioters at bay. But there were, then of course during the night, they started getting prisoners, and they put them in the, Chief Tatum, campus security, was in the basement below the registrar's office at the time.
Okay.
And so that's why they were holding them, and they filled that place up pretty soon. But then the National Guard came in, and then federal troops the Army began arriving. And there were about 23,000 of them total after a day or two were on campus, and they were bivouacked all over campus. They had their little tents all over the stadium, in the academic areas, along the streets. That's where they were sleeping, and of course they got control of it. There was some action uptown the next morning, but they pretty much curtailed that quickly because there were just numbers of them. That was, I guess, during the missile crisis in Cuba, and
I think so.
And Kennedy was. This was sort of an exercise. That's why so many. They knew they didn't need that many people here in Oxford, but they were. I think they were doing a trial run of how quickly they could move troops in case that Russian ship with the missiles on it went on to Cuba. And that was, I believe that's what's been explained to me as the reason for so many troops to come in. Now, the books talk about student involvement. Students later on, and the student affairs folks walked every night. We'd walk around the dormitories to try to keep them from shooting firecrackers. And there were some of that, but and some harassment, but not to the extent that the students were that involved. Most of them just went on and about their business and ignored what had happened and Mr. Meredith himself.
Well, yeah, that doesn't really surprise me, but in any case, that's the way it was, and so people dealt with it as best they could.
Well, you know, you have to ask yourself, especially after so many years, what really do you remember, and how much of it is accurate? And my story may not be. It may show some prejudice on my part, not relative to race, but remembering things correctly. So I may have some things wrong. I won't say that I'm 100% correct, but so far as I can remember, that's what I experienced, what I saw and heard.
Yeah.
But then after that, I don't know how long you want to go with this.
Well, we can go however long we want to.
Okay.
I mean, usually I've been, these things have been running at least an hour and occasionally longer, but it's basically, it's up to the person who's being interviewed, and we can go as it suits you or not.
Well, it might be helpful to say something about the aftermath.
Well, it would be helpful to me for you to say everything you want to say, because I don't think anybody else has said it, at least not that I know of.
Well, immediately, Association of Colleges and Schools were threatening to take away our accreditation.
Yes, I know all about that.
And J.D. Williams was trying to walk that line between not letting the legislature and the governor shut down the university, right, and even though they had certainly interfered, the governor had set himself up as registrar.
Right.
But J.D. Williams, bless his heart, and I have great respect for Dr. Williams.
I do too.
He was a great man, but he was trying to walk that line. He made speeches all over the country, showing them that the university itself was inundated with political kinds of things, but we responded as best we could, and we deserved a chance to grow once this burden had been lifted, and to continue. So that on one front he sent out a lot of people to make conciliatory speeches.
Yes.
And then a second thing that he decided we needed to do is to get more involved nationally in various organizations. And I was asked to go to the College Entrance Examination Board because this was the premier testing company back then. It was they were primarily involved with private schools along the East Coast and California, out west.
Right.
All the prestigious schools belonged to, because that was a part of the admissions process.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was thought that to have some presence with that group would be important. So I was sent, the first time I'd ever been on a plane, I was sent to New York, and we met in the Waldorf Astoria.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you mentioned the fact that sometimes we just fall into things, and you hadn't planned it, but things happen that maybe change your life or the direction you're going or whatever. But this was a growth experience for me, in that first place, I don't know, maybe 20,000 people were there at that their national convention that I went to. And in the Waldorf Astoria, you may have been there, they have these huge tables.
Right.
And for the luncheon, you go in and there must be, maybe 18 people around a table or something like that. Well, I sat down at the table, and this was in the, I guess, January of '63.
Mm-hmm.
Was a few months after integration. And so everybody, you in a situation like that, you introduce yourself and where you're from.
Right.
And so I introduced, they got around to me, and I introduced Ken Wooten from the University of Mississippi. And this little nun that was sitting next to me said, "Oh," and she really got into me. She started telling me this, that, and the other, and how bad we were, and it was just shameful, and that we shouldn't have any accreditation, should not be recognized, that I shouldn't be there. I mean, she was, and so finally, when she kind of slowed down, because I didn't know her, I said, "And who are you, and where are you from?" And she said, "Oh, I'm Sister so-and-so." It was some little Catholic school somewhere. I don't even remember where it was. But says, and I teach history, but not from your perspective. And I said, "Lady, how do you know what my perspective is?" And when I did that, people around the table, and I promised myself right then that I'm going to be a part of this organization, and I'm going to prove that they, Mississippi, we don't all, we wear shoes sometimes, and we may not speak as correctly, maybe as some of you, but we're people, and there's good, smart folks in Mississippi too, maybe. That was '63. In '69, they elect each year. Well, they're staggered 4-year terms, but 18 people. So there are 4 people every year from throughout the country were elected to the Board of Trustees. And I was one of those people that got elected to the Board of Trustees, and that gave me an opportunity to go to New York 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times every year for 4 years, and met with, there were college presidents, there were all kinds of people there that I was able to engage with. And so that was an education, a real education for me. And had it not been for the university, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So.
No, you wouldn't have.
And that's why the university means a great deal to me, to give me those kinds of opportunities.
Right.
And they let me travel. I was still in financial aid at that point, and so student aid, after the National Defense Act provided some loans for students, but after to counteract Sputnik, but after the America's space activity became, and we were sending up satellites, then the Congress tried to do away with all student aid for colleges, for students in colleges and universities. And so there were a group of us that decided that we'd try to do something about it. So anyway, we met for about 3 or 4 years, sort of informally, and then in '69 we formed the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, and because nobody else wanted it, I was elected first president. There was representatives from I believe there were 12 institutions that went to Washington, and so we started going to congressmen, going to meetings, doing everything we could to encourage Congress to continue aid, which they did, and we kept adding programs over the years. And now that organization includes all the bankers that are involved in making student loans now, and other organizations, foundations that are involved. So now and government officials, as well as financial aid officers. Now there's probably about 30,000 members or more. So it's going strong. National, one of those Washington organizations that go to Congress.
Is somebody behind me?
Yeah.
Me?
Who's there?
Mickey?
Oh, Vicky.
Uh-huh.
I need you to help me get up and get to the bathroom.
Okay.
Hate to excuse myself, but I just got to.
Going again, just
Okay.
pick
well,
up
and
where
we'll-
we left off. All right.
Wait just a minute. Where I'm going to start back is try to start back where we were, and excuse me, cover some of the things that we were talking about. Excuse me, that are important in the history of this institution and the whole community, but particularly the university I'm interested in, and you could range around to talk about whatever you want to, because I think it's all relevant to what we're discussing, and I think most of what we're talking about has not received a whole lot of attention. I don't know, but that's my feeling.
Well, the university has been the catalyst for a lot of things. I remember, well, of course, this was after I retired that I became involved with the Chamber of Commerce, and the university was very much involved in setting up committees and helping the chamber along in making some progress with the business community and the town university relations. And one of the things that happened at that point was the fact that we got interested in getting retirees to move to Oxford. And of course the university was interested in that, the business people were interested in it. At that point, and this was in the late 80s, early 90s, there were a few of the snowbirds that would go to Texas or to Florida, but there was no organized way of trying to attract people. And we had a session, as I recall, in which we got to thinking, well, look what Oxford has to offer. We have a major university, we're close to a major airport, we've got fairly low cost of living, we don't have a lot of crime, it's an art community, we have a lot of artists here, and with the Faulkner mystique and all that, we've got a lot to sell. So we formed a committee to attract retirees. Some university people were involved, some of us county and townspeople were involved. And we started, well, first started do a little advertising around. And we got a few travel writers to come and make write up something. Where to Retire, it was a Mississippi magazine back then. I think they still have it. And a fellow from Greenville came up and did some interviews and wrote a good article, and it got a little press. And then Lawrence Chandler was president of the Economic Development Foundation at the time, and he wanted to know what else could we do. And they were having, some of the other states had begun to think about getting retired. We didn't have any place in Mississippi that were thinking about it at the time. But there was to be a meeting, and it was held in Montgomery, Alabama. And 9 states, I believe, participated in it. And all of them were looking for, since the climate is good here and we have all these advantages, can't we attract more of the people from the Northeast, especially those that have been going to Florida and for the winter, or to South Texas for the winter? Can't we attract some of those people to come to our states? Mm-hmm. And so they invited travel writers from throughout the country to come to this southeastern meeting, and that was held in Montgomery. And Lawrence Chandler asked if I'd go, and so because I'd been on that committee, and I said, yeah, I'll go. And so I went over to Montgomery, and we heard what they did is they had somebody, some guru, talk about, how you could attract people, and then they had each of the states that had a program mm-hmm. to tell what they were doing. And since I was the only one there from Mississippi, I got to tell them about Oxford, right, and what we were doing. And after I finished, this guy came up to me. He was from California, and he said, this travel writer, mm-hmm. and he said to me, well, Oxford sounds like a real nice little town. I said, yeah, it is. Go home with me. And he said, what? I said, go home with me. He said, well, I'm on my way to Florida. They've invited me down. I said, well, you can go to Florida anytime. When can you go to Oxford, Mississippi with me? Yeah, right. And he said, but they promised to take me fishing. I said, I'll take you fishing. Yeah, right. Make a long story short, he came. Uh-huh. And he stayed out with us in the country, the lake. We went out on the lake, caught a bunch of bass, we'd already had lunch, but
Is he ready to eat again?
he ate 2 of those huge bass. And anyway, he spent, I guess, the better part of a week with us. And we went out and talked to the public officials, and we talked to the artists, and we went all around. Well, he happened to be writing a book on where to retire. And it came...
It's all fit in, didn't it?
Yeah. And it came out about 4 months later, and guess where the #1 small town in which to retire?
Oxford.
Oxford. And of course, when that book came out, others picked it up. We invited travel writers here, and we started getting this good publicity. And the university then, when people started coming, they said, we'll give you free tuition. So that was something we could advertise. Margaret, as you know, built Azalea Gardens, so we had some place for them to bring if they had family that needed those services, or something for some health care that they could look forward to. We had a good health service here. So all these things sort of fit together, and so everybody now talks about Oxford as being one of the, in fact, who is it? Somebody just came out again and said it was the best place, in the top 10 places in the world in which to retire.
I read that too, but...
having that influx of people, and generally they were people who were interested in education.
Right.
Generally they didn't have children. They didn't, the school situation wasn't affected that much, but they built homes, they brought money to put in our banks, they added to our community. They made all these restaurants that have popped up, in the businesses that have occurred here. All that is, in a large part, and our growth in population in a large part has been due to retirees that have come and have become a part of Oxford and the university community, and just has made it a better place to live. Some people complain about traffic or about, we've got enough people, don't tell them about us anymore. But they've added so much to the community and to its social and academic life. It's been amazing to watch this growth. And the university been a major part of that, and look how it's grown. So that reputation has certainly been improved since 1962.
Indeed it has, and I think the whole community here has worked at that, whether very consciously so or not, but I think consciously so.
Because they believe in it. If they ever get to the point where they doubt it, this will stop.
Yeah. Well, I don't see that happening, do you, anytime soon?
No. People are enthusiastic about Oxford. You always have complaints about this, that, or the other. The streets may not be patched when they're needed, or sewage may not work sometimes at some places, but
welcome to small town America.
Yeah, well, it's growing pains.
Yeah.
It's not having and you look at so many small towns. There's towns the same size as Oxford,
right,
that has lost their center city, the square, and with all the growth of malls and that sort of thing, That hasn't happened in Oxford, but it's not boarded up. You go to almost any place in this country the size of Oxford, and so many of them, half the town is boarded up. The buildings are run down. The streets aren't repaired. Nobody paints anything. They just are dying.
But that's not true here.
That's not true here. And it's because of the enthusiasm that people have for their town and their interest in being a part of it and being a good citizen. We're fortunate to have those kind of people that make it what it is.
Well, indeed we are. And I think that the town has done everything to promote that as well, and has done so very successfully, and with the results of more activity around the university than it would have otherwise.
Yeah. Well, the visitors, certainly, you know, we've got some landmark things, the Faulkner home and other things that people, Lamar House or whatever, that they come here to see. But they just come here, you know, there are lots of people that just come to Oxford to shop on the weekend, which is amazing to me, that people that live in areas that have shopping centers and so on, they'll come down here, or just to be in Oxford for the weekend.
Yeah, well, it surprises me too, but it's to the benefit of the community.
Certainly.
Well, I think that we're fortunate all the way around, and I'm just glad for what we've got and what we're able to do with it.
Well, it's a good life here in this area.
We could just be very satisfied with ourselves in a sense, and not to be smug about it, but I am somewhat smug about it, because that's what it promotes.
You have to be smug about it, but at the same time, you have to still reach out to people and be friendly, and most people, and you have to be enthusiastic about the place that you live.
Well,
And that rubs off on any visitor that comes to town.
Yeah, it does. I think it does too.
Just being sincerely interested in them and wanting them to know about your the place that you live.
Right. Well, we're fortunate. We keep saying so, but it's true, and I'm glad that we have these advantages and can make the most of it, because I think that we do well to do that, and share our enthusiasms with other people. And I think we will continue to do that. At least that's my feeling.
Well, I thank you for letting me tell my little stories, and how pleased I am to be part of the university and the community of Oxford.
Well, I'm delighted, and it's been an opportunity for me that Will didn't give me much direction or idea, except, well, he really didn't give me much of any idea, except that he wanted to go ahead with whatever I could put together, and he didn't really specify, just, you know, just do it. You know what to do, go do it. And so that's what I've done, and I keep spinning out other things to do, and he'll say, "Oh yeah, do that, you know." So anyway, it's been a pleasure for me to draw on the opportunity that he has just sort of thrown my way and said, "Do what you can with it," and of course that's what I'm doing.
And we appreciate that.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad to have the opportunity because not just everybody has that, and it's a blessing to be able to turn around and say, well, whatever you want to respond to, I'm giving it the best that I can. And so there we are. That's where we are. And that's enough for me for today.
Well, thank you for recording a part of history.
Well, it's my pleasure. And if I've forgotten things that you can remind me of, please do so, because it's hard to keep all these details in mind, and it's important that the opportunity is there to tell as much of this period as we can and as we find useful, and I think that's a good thing. At least for me it is, and I'm grateful for your participating. And I've only just selected people. I won't say willy-nilly or random, because that's not true, but I've selected people as I decided to. And we've been going from there, and we will continue to. And it's a pleasure to have people like you to interview. As I said, I'm really not talking to that many people, just people that I know are worth talking to, and you're one of those.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And we'll continue on when we think up anything else. I think we've covered all the ground that I can think to cover right now.
I've told more than I know.
Well, that's all right. I mean, that's a good part of it. You can just keep embellishing on that any way you want to. Nobody's going to deny you or suggest any different. If you say so, we'll say, oh yeah, that's right. We go from there.
Thank you.
It's been my pleasure, Ken, and it's been one of the good interviews for me. And as I said, it's just mine are selected at random as I chose, and I think that's a gift to have somebody give you and say, go for it, whatever you want to do. And so we continue on, and I look forward to it, and think we probably can't do any better than talking to one another.
Well, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.